Hello, this is Miss D again. Today we will be exploring how we can compare decimals. So let's get started by looking at slide C. So slide C should look a little bit familiar from if you took a look at slide B. So for this slide, we're going to drag the expression shorter than or longer than to complete the sentence below. Then use the place value chart to help you compare the numbers. So I want you to go ahead and complete these two tasks, and when you're ready, you can go ahead and unpause. So what did you think? We are comparing the tape diagrams here of 4/10 and 34/100. The length of tape that is 4/10 of a meter is, what did you say, shorter than or longer than the length of the tape that is 34/100 of a meter. If you said longer than, you're right. You might be asking, well, why is that? Well, if we go ahead and use some 100 charts to go ahead and model this. If we shade in 4/10, we would shade in 1 column, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, right? That represents 4 out of the 10 columns shaded. And if we go ahead and shade in 34/100, well, that would be 10, 20, 30, and 4 more. Now look at it. Which one looks like more to you? Yeah, this one. So let me go ahead and move these out of the way for us so we can finish looking at these problems here. All right, so 4/10 of a meter is greater than 34/100 of a meter. And that means that 34/100 is less than 4/10. Let's go ahead and explore this a little bit more on the next slide. We're going to skip ahead to slide E. So here it wants us to examine the mass of each item below. Remember, mass is the amount of matter an object has. And it's asking us to find which item is the heaviest and how do we know? So you're going to complete these prompts here. The heaviest item is the, I know this because, and what does this make you think about comparing decimals? So go ahead and answer those or complete those 3 sentences. When you're ready, unpause. Okay, so what did you think the heaviest item was? Was it the avocado, the apple, the bananas, or the grapes? If you said grapes, you're correct. And how do we know this? Well, if we think about the lesson that we were looking at yesterday and thinking about, well, how would we say this using hundredths? How would we say the banana's mass in hundredths? It'll make it a lot easier to compare. So how do we know the grapes are the heaviest? We know because 61/100 is greater than 60/100. That would be our banana. Our 12/100, which is the apple, and the 20/100, which is the avocado. Remember, 2/10 means 2 out of the 10 columns, or 20 little squares out of 100. And last question, what does this make you think about comparing decimals? When comparing decimals, we have to remember to pay attention to the values of the digits in the tenths and hundredths place. Just because it has a 2, it doesn't mean that it's a small amount. Remember, that means there are 2 in the tenths place. All right, let's go exploring this a little bit more on the next slide. So here it wants us to record the weight of each item below in the place value chart. And then it wants you to complete these 2 sentences here and explain how the place value chart helped you to reach those conclusions. So go ahead and answer those questions. When you're ready, you can go ahead and unpause. So did your place value chart look something like this? Right? We just wrote it as it was here on the scales, right? Avocado 0 and 2/10, apple, 0 and 12/100, banana, 6/10, and grapes, 61/100. Now, which wants us to complete these, we're using the word heavier or lighter. The avocado is blank than the apple. So if we look at the avocado and the apple, well, you see a 2 here, right? And you see a 12 here, but don't forget the 2 is in the tens place. So the avocado is heavier because we have 2 in the tens place while we only have 1 in the tenths place for the apple. And how about the second one? The bunch of banana is heavier or lighter than the grapes? If you said lighter, you're right. Again, if we look here, for the banana, we have 6 in the tens place. We also have 6 in the tens place for grapes, but we also have an extra 100th for the grapes. So that makes the grapes 1/100th of a kilogram heavier than the bananas. So the place value chart can really help us to see which numbers are greater than the other. And again, pay attention to the numbers that are in your tens place. You'll notice the heavier items of the banana and the grapes, while the least heaviest is the apple because it has the smallest number in the tens place. Let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So here is a sample from student A, and you'll see that they've completed the values similar to what we did. And they've also wrote down what they did and why they did it. And they wrote, when I listed the weight of each item in the place value chart, I noticed that both the bananas and the grapes had a 6 in the tenths place. However, the grapes also had a 1 in the hundredths place. I know that 6/10 is equivalent to 60/100, so I added a 0 in the hundredths place for the bananas. Now I could see that the grapes were heavier because 61/100 is more than 60/100. The avocado is heavier than the apple because the 2 in the tenths, because that is a 2 in 2/10, where the apple only had 1 in the tenths place. So they want you to go ahead and analyze student A's thinking. What do you notice? What do you wonder? And what does this make you think about comparing decimals? So go ahead and answer those questions. When you're ready, you can go ahead and unpause. So what did you notice? Did you notice they added a 0 for the banana in order to compare the banana and the grapes? So they added this 0 here. This wasn't here. What do you wonder? Did you wonder why they didn't add a 0 in the hundredths place for the avocado? Right? We could say it as 2/10, but we can also say it as 20/100. And final question, what does this make you think about comparing decimals? Just because there might be 1 digit in the decimal place doesn't mean it will be less than 2 digits in the decimal places. For example, 2/10 is greater than 12/100 since there are 2/10 in 0.2 and only 1/10 in 0.12. So just because there's 1 digit doesn't mean it's going to be less than a 2-digit decimal. So keep that in mind. All right, we've reached the end of this video segment. I hope this video was helpful in helping you compare decimals. Great job. See you next time.